Noblesville, Indiana, woke up to the sound of the first cars heading to work. This small town, with a population of just over 30,000, lived a quiet life, where everyone knew their neighbors by sight, and news spread faster than the local newspaper. The main street ran through the center, connecting old brick buildings with modern shopping centers on the outskirts. Roger Coleman opened the gates of his auto repair shop at 7 o'clock sharp, as he had done every day for the past 15 years. At 50, he looked older than his years. Gray hair, wrinkles around his eyes, and the calloused hands of a mechanic. His Coleman's Auto Repair was located on 8th Street, in a building he had bought while he was still married. Back then, life seemed to be going according to plan. A successful business, a house in a nice neighborhood, and a wife, Carol, who dreamed of having children. But the children never came. Carol blamed Roger, even though the doctors said the problem was hers. Gradually, their marriage turned into a cold coexistence, until 6 months ago, when Carol announced that she was moving in with her sister in Fort Wayne. The divorce went through without much drama. There was nothing to divide except the house, which Roger bought for half the price. Now, he lived alone in a house that was too big for him, ate dinner in front of the TV, and fell asleep to the sound of the news. Work was the only thing that kept him going. Roger loved fixing cars. Unlike human relationships, you could always find something wrong with them and fix it. "Good morning, Roger," Dan Hill called out as he walked by with a thermos of coffee in his hands. Dan worked at Harrison's sawmill and passed by the auto repair shop every morning. They had been friends since school, and Dan was one of the few who hadn't changed his attitude toward Roger after the divorce. "Hey, Dan, how's it going at the sawmill?" Same old, same old. "Hey, want to grab a beer at the Red Dog tonight?" Roger shook his head. "Not tonight. Too much work." Dan nodded understandingly. After the divorce, Roger had started avoiding crowded places, especially bars where he might run into mutual acquaintances of Carol's. He preferred to have breakfast and lunch at a small cafe called Main Street in the center of town, where he could sit quietly and read the newspaper. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Roger headed to the cafe as usual. The place was owned by Linda Parks, a woman in her 50s who treated her customers like family. The cafe was located in an old brick building with large windows and checkered tablecloths. It always smelled of fresh coffee and homemade baked goods. "Roger, the usual?" Linda asked when she saw him at the door. "Yes, thank you." He sat down at his usual table by the window, where he could see the traffic on the main street. Linda brought him his coffee and a bacon sandwich. Roger opened the Noblesville Ledger and immersed himself in the local news. "Excuse me, is this your order?" Roger looked up and saw a girl he hadn't seen before. She was young, in her early 20s, with long brown hair and hazel eyes. She was slim, of medium height, dressed in the cafe uniform of black pants and a white shirt with an apron. "No, my order has already been brought," he replied, pointing to his table. "Are you new here?" The girl smiled. "Yes, I'm Gloria Morgan. I started working here last week." "Roger Coleman, nice to meet you." He held out his hand. Her hand was soft and warm. "Are you from around here?" "I've lived here all my life. Where are you from?" Gloria hesitated for a moment. "Columbus. I decided to try living in a small town." Roger nodded. In recent years, many young people had moved to Noblesville. It was close enough to Indianapolis to work there, but small enough to retain its small-town charm. "How do you like it here?" "I like it so far. The people are friendly and it's quiet. I needed a fresh start." There was a hint of sadness in her voice that Roger recognized. He himself had been looking for a fresh start after his divorce. "I understand. Sometimes a change of scenery helps." Linda called Gloria from behind the counter, and the girl apologized. Roger watched her leave, noting how gracefully she moved and how naturally she smiled at customers. Something about her attracted him, perhaps the sincerity that was so lacking in his life. Over the next week, Roger began to visit the cafe more often. At first, he told himself that it was just convenient to have breakfast before work and lunch during his break. But the truth was that he was looking forward to seeing Gloria. She was always friendly, remembered how he liked his coffee, and was interested in his work. "So you're a mechanic?" she asked one day as she poured him a cup of coffee. Yes, I have my own auto repair shop. It's a family business, you could say, although I don't have a family anymore. Gloria nodded sympathetically. I understand. I also have a complicated relationship with my family. Would you like to talk about it? Not now. Maybe someday. Roger could see that Gloria had her own story, her own wounds. It made her even more attractive, not because he wanted to save her, but because he felt a kindred spirit. Dan noticed the change in his friend. You've been smiling a lot more, he said one evening when they finally met at the Red Dog. Maybe. Is it that girl from the cafe, Gloria? Roger looked at him in surprise. How do you know? Noblesville is a small town, Roger. Everyone sees you hanging out there. She's a pretty girl, by the way. We're just talking. Sure, how old is she? I'm not sure. 22, 23. Dan shook his head. Roger, be careful. You're going through a divorce, you're lonely. Don't rush into anything. I'm not rushing. We're not even dating. Bye. Roger couldn't deny that he was thinking about Gloria. She was young and beautiful, but it wasn't just that. There was something mysterious and deep about her that intrigued him. Sometimes he caught a shadow of sadness in her eyes that disappeared as soon as she noticed him looking at her. Gloria was thinking about Roger too. He was older than the men she had dated before, but he had a reliability that she lacked. After what had happened in Columbus, she was looking for a place where she could just be herself without having to explain or justify herself. Moving to Noblesville was an attempt to start a new life. She rented a small apartment above a flower shop and got a job with Linda, who took her in without asking any questions. Linda was kind to her, almost motherly, and Gloria cherished that warmth. But the secret she kept weighed heavily on her heart. Every time Roger looked at her with interest, she felt both joy and fear. What would happen if he found out the truth? That she was born in a male body, that she had lived as a woman for the past 5 years, that she had to leave Columbus because of threats and harassment? Roger seemed like a kind man, but Gloria knew that even the kindest people could change when they learned the truth, especially in conservative places like Noblesville. Gloria, are you okay? Linda asked, noticing her thoughtfulness. Yes, just tired. Why don't you go home early? It's a quiet day today. Gloria nodded gratefully. She needed time to think. Roger was taking up more and more space in her thoughts, and she knew it could be dangerous. But at the same time, after months of loneliness, his attention was like a breath of fresh air. That evening, Roger stopped by the cafe for dinner and didn't see Gloria. Linda explained that she had let her leave early. She's a nice girl, Linda said as she served him his order, but she's cautious. You can tell she's been through something tough. Yes, I noticed that too. Be gentle with her, Roger. She deserves kindness. Roger realized that Linda wasn't saying this by accident. She had seen his interest in Gloria and was warning him in her own way. But warning him about what? That he shouldn't hurt her, or that Gloria herself might be dangerous. On his way home, Roger thought about the strangeness of the situation. He was a middle-aged, divorced, lonely man, interested in a girl who could be his daughter. But age didn't seem to be an obstacle. There was a connection between them that was difficult to explain. In his empty house, Roger felt for the first time in a long time that life could change for the better. He didn't know what exactly attracted him to Gloria, but he knew he wanted to get to know her better. Tomorrow, he would go back to the cafe and maybe work up the courage to ask her out on a real date. Meanwhile, Gloria lay in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling. She thought about how Roger had looked at her, how his face lit up with a smile when he saw her. No one had looked at her like that in a long time. The last few months in Columbus had been filled with fear and suspicion. Here, she almost believed she could be a normal girl. The next morning, Roger woke up with an unusual feeling of anticipation. For the first time in months, he had a reason to look forward to a new day. He spent more time shaving and choosing a shirt than usual. Gloria was already working at the Main Street Cafe, setting tables for the morning rush. When she saw Roger at the door, she smiled, sincerely without her usual professional politeness. Good morning, Roger. The usual? Good morning. Yes, please. And Gloria? Yes? Maybe when you have a break, we could talk, just talk. Gloria hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. Sure, I have a break at 2. Roger smiled and walked over to his table. He could feel the other patrons watching him. In a small town, any change in behavior did not go unnoticed. Frank Johnson from the hardware store raised an eyebrow meaningfully, and Mary Thompson, the banker's wife, whispered something to her companion. Linda brought Roger his coffee and sat down across from him. "Roger, I've known you for many years. You're a good man, but Gloria is special. She's had a difficult life." "What do you mean?" "I can't tell you other people's secrets. Just be patient with her. Don't rush things." Roger nodded, though his curiosity was piqued even more. What could have happened in the life of such a young girl? At 2 o'clock, Gloria took off her apron and joined Roger at the table. She poured herself some tea and sat down, nervously fixing her hair. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me," Roger began. "I know we haven't known each other long, but I'd like to get to know you better." "What would you like to know?" "Everything. How you ended up in Noblesville, what you like, what your dreams are, the usual things." Gloria smiled cautiously. "That's a big topic. What about you? Linda said you recently got divorced." 6 months ago. Carol and I were married for 20 years, but people change. Or maybe we just realized we were never right for each other. That must have been hard." "It was. But now I realize I'm free. For the first time in a long time, I can think about what I want, not what's expected of me." Gloria nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. Sometimes you have to destroy the old life to build a new one." "Is that you? Moving from Columbus?" Gloria tensed. "Partly. It got hard there. I needed a fresh start." Roger could see she wasn't ready to talk about it, so he didn't press her. Instead, he told her about his auto repair shop, how he loved fixing things, and the little joys of his work. Gloria listened attentively, asked questions, and gradually the atmosphere became more relaxed. "Have you always wanted to work in a cafe?" Roger asked. "No, it's temporary. I studied psychology in college, but I didn't finish. Maybe I'll go back to school someday." "Psychology? That's interesting. That explains why you're so good with people." Gloria blushed at the compliment. "I don't know about that. I just try to be attentive." Their conversation was interrupted by Linda, who reminded Gloria that the break was over. Getting up from the table, Roger gathered his courage. "Gloria, maybe we could go out sometime? Dinner or just a walk?" Gloria hesitated. Roger saw the struggle in her eyes, the desire to say yes versus caution. "I would like to." "Great. Is tomorrow evening okay?" "Sure." Roger left the cafe feeling victorious. Dan was waiting for him at the car repair shop, looking worried. "Roger, I have to tell you something. People are starting to talk." "About what?" "About you and that girl. Frank says you're at the cafe every day, and Mary Thompson is already spreading rumors that you've lost your mind." Roger frowned. "Mary Thompson has always been a gossip. What's wrong with having breakfast at a cafe?" "Nothing, if it were just breakfast. But everyone sees how you look at her. Roger, think about it. You're 50, she's 20-something. People will talk. Let them talk. I have a right to a private life." "Of course you do. Just be careful. We don't know anything about her past." "What do we need to know? She's a nice girl. Hardworking." Dan sighed. "All right. But if something goes wrong, don't say I didn't warn you." Meanwhile, Gloria finished her workday in turmoil. She liked Roger more than she was willing to admit. In his presence, she felt desirable and interesting. But the fear of being exposed wouldn't leave her. "How's it going, honey?" Linda asked, counting the takings. "Linda, can I ask you something?" "Sure. What do you think of Roger?" Linda looked at her intently. "He's a good man, honest, reliable, but conservative, traditional. Why do you ask?" "He asked me out on a date." Linda sat down next to her. "Gloria, I don't know all the details of your story, and I won't pry, but I can see that you have secrets. Roger will find out sooner or later. What do you advise?" "Be honest with him. Maybe not right away, but if the relationship becomes serious, he deserves to know the truth." Gloria nodded, although the thought of telling Roger about her past made her tremble with fear. The next evening, Roger picked Gloria up at the cafe in his pickup truck. He chose a restaurant in a neighboring town, not because he was ashamed of their meeting, but because he wanted them to be able to talk quietly without prying eyes. "It's a beautiful place," Gloria said as they entered Giuseppe's, a small Italian restaurant with dim lighting and the smell of garlic and basil. "I used to come here a lot. The owner is an excellent cook." Gloria realized he was referring to his ex-wife and tactfully changed the subject. Over dinner, they talked about books, movies, and music. Roger was surprised to discover that despite their age difference, they had a lot in common. "Do you like old movies?" he asked when Gloria mentioned Casablanca. "I love them. They have a romance that modern movies lack." Carol couldn't stand black and white movies. She said they were boring. "I think it's the lack of color that makes you focus on the story, on the emotions." Roger looked at her with admiration. Gloria wasn't just beautiful. She was intelligent and sensitive. He was beginning to realize that he was falling in love, and it both delighted and frightened him. After dinner, they took a walk in a small park near the restaurant. The evening was warm, and the stars shone brightly in the clear sky. "Thank you for a wonderful evening," Gloria said. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." They stopped at a bench. Roger felt an overwhelming desire to take her hand, but didn't dare. "Roger, I have something to tell you. My past is complicated. If we continue seeing each other, there may be things that surprise or upset you." "Gloria, everyone has a past. I do too. What matters is who we are now." "But what if what? Did you kill someone? Rob a bank?" Gloria smiled sadly. "No, nothing like that." "Then we can get through anything." If only Roger knew how wrong he was. They hardly spoke on the way home, but the silence was comfortable. When Roger dropped Gloria off at her house, she paused for a moment. "Roger? Yes? I haven't been with anyone in a very long time. Please don't rush me." "We'll go at whatever pace you're comfortable with." Gloria quickly kissed him on the cheek and ran out of the car. Roger sat there for a few more minutes, touching the spot where her lips had touched his skin. Over the next few weeks, their relationship developed slowly but steadily. Roger stopped by the cafe every day, and they met in the evenings to walk, go to the movies, and dine in quiet places. Gloria gradually relaxed, allowing herself to enjoy Roger's company. She told him about her childhood in a small town in Ohio, how she lost her parents at an early age, and her years in foster care. Roger listened, sympathized, and shared his own stories. Gradually, trust grew between them, but Gloria carefully avoided certain topics. When Roger asked about college, she responded evasively. When asked why she left Columbus, she only said that it got hard there. Roger didn't press her, but his curiosity grew. Dan continued to express his concern. "She's a nice girl, Roger, but there's something about her. It's like she's always on guard. Maybe she's just cautious, after what she went through as a child." "Maybe, but you're falling in love with her, it's obvious. What do you really know about her?" Roger couldn't answer that question, and it bothered him. But when he was with Gloria, all his doubts faded away. She was sincere in her emotions, gentle, attentive. Wasn't that enough? Gloria was also struggling with her growing feelings. Roger was everything she lacked: reliable, kind, honest. She felt safe with him, but the secret she was keeping was becoming increasingly difficult to bear. Every time Roger hugged her, she tensed up, afraid he would sense something was wrong. When he talked about the future, about how good they were together, her heart ached with fear. What would happen when he found out the truth? One evening, after a particularly pleasant date, Roger walked her home and lingered at the door longer than usual. "Gloria, I have to tell you something." Her heart skipped a beat. "What?" "I'm falling in love with you. No, I'm already in love. I know we haven't known each other long, and I don't want to scare you, but—" Gloria interrupted him with a kiss on the lips. It was their first real kiss, tender and full of promise. When they broke apart, both of their eyes were shining with tears. "I love you too," Gloria whispered. Roger hugged her tighter, feeling something fundamental change in his life. After months of emptiness and loneliness, he was alive again. Gloria felt the change too, but her joy was clouded by fear. Now that they had confessed their love for each other, the stakes were higher. Sooner or later, she would have to tell him the truth, and she knew that it could destroy everything they had. But tonight she allowed herself to just be happy, to be loved. Tomorrow would bring its own problems, but today she was in the arms of a man who loved her for who she was. If only she knew how short it would be. A month had passed since that memorable evening when Roger and Gloria kissed for the first time. Their relationship grew stronger every day, and Roger felt young, as if he were rediscovering life. He started dressing better, took care of himself, and even joined a gym to get in shape. "You're glowing," Linda remarked when Roger walked into the cafe that morning. "That's what happens when you're happy," he replied, unable to hide his smile. Gloria was working behind the counter, making coffee. When she saw Roger, she winked at him, and he felt a familiar warmth in his chest. Even little things like that made his day better. But not everyone in Noblesville shared his joy. Rumors about Roger Coleman's inappropriate relationship spread through the town like wildfire. At the barber shop, people discussed how he could forget his wife so quickly. At church, they whispered about the sin of debauchery. And at the local bar, men made lewd comments about the old fool and the young girl. Pastor Williams even approached Roger after Sunday service. "Roger, I understand that divorce is difficult, but you shouldn't rush into a new relationship, especially with a girl who could be your daughter. With all due respect, Pastor, my personal life is my business. In a small town, no one's personal life is private. People are watching you, Roger. You're a respected man, but a relationship like this could damage your reputation." Roger clenched his fists but held back. "Gloria is a wonderful girl. If people can't see that, it's their problem, not ours." The pastor shook his head and walked away, but his words lingered in Roger's mind. Did their relationship really look inappropriate? Was he making a fool of himself? These thoughts tormented him until he met Gloria that evening. As soon as she smiled, all his doubts disappeared. What did he care what other people thought? He loved this woman, and she loved him. "What are you thinking about?" Gloria asked as they walked through the city park. "People are talking about us." Gloria tensed. "What exactly are they saying?" "That I'm too old for you, that our relationship is inappropriate." "Do you think so?" Roger stopped and took her hands. "No, I think we're perfect for each other. Age is just a number." Gloria felt relieved. If that was all that bothered people, she could handle it. It would be much worse if they found out the truth about her past. "Roger, I don't care what other people say. All that matters is how we feel." He held her tightly, breathing in the scent of her hair. In moments like this, the whole world shrunk to the size of their embrace. But Gloria couldn't completely relax. The deeper their relationship grew, the harder it was to hide the truth. She came up with new excuses when Roger suggested spending the night together. She managed to blame it on her conservatism, on her desire to take things slow. But she knew it couldn't go on like this forever. One evening, when they were watching a movie at Roger's house, he brought up the future. "Gloria, I know we haven't been dating long, but I feel like you're the one. I'm thinking about us living together." Gloria's heart skipped a beat. "Roger, not right now, of course, when you're ready, but I want you to know that I'm serious." Gloria was silent, not knowing what to say. Living together would mean that it would be impossible to hide the truth. Sooner or later, he would find out. "You're quiet. Did I scare you?" "No, it's just a big step. I need time to think." Roger nodded understandingly, but Gloria could see the disappointment in his eyes. She wanted to say yes, to shout with joy, to plan their future together. But instead, she lied again to the man she loved. That night, Gloria hardly slept, tormented by her guilty conscience. She had reached the point where her silence was becoming a betrayal. Roger was making plans for their future together based on incomplete information about her. Was that fair to him? The next day at the cafe, she was distracted and sad. Linda noticed. "What's wrong, dear?" "Linda, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Have you ever lied to someone you loved?" Linda looked at her intently. "Is this about Roger?" Gloria nodded. "Sit down. Tell me." Gloria sat down at a table in the corner of the cafe. There were few customers, and they could talk quietly. "He's talking about moving in together, about a serious relationship. But there are things about my past that he doesn't know. Important things. And you're afraid that if you tell him, he'll leave you?" "Yes." Linda sighed. "Gloria, I don't know all the details of your story, but I can see that you're a good person. If Roger really loves you, he'll accept you for who you are. And if he doesn't, then he's not the man you deserve." Gloria knew Linda was right, but fear was stronger than logic. She had already been through this in Columbus. She had trusted a man, told him the truth, and it had ended in disaster. Threats, stalking, the need to leave urgently. She wasn't sure she could go through that again. Meanwhile, Roger consulted with Dan. "I'm seriously thinking about proposing to her," he said over a beer at the Red Dog. Dan almost choked. "Propose? Roger, you've been dating her for 2 months. When you know you've found your soulmate, time doesn't matter. Jesus, you're really falling in love like a teenager. Roger, think about it. You don't know anything about her." "I know she's kind, smart, and beautiful." "That's not a biography. That's a list of qualities. Where was she born? Where did she go to school? Why did she leave Columbus? Does she have a family, friends, past relationships?" Roger fell silent. Dan was right. He really didn't know much about Gloria's past. But did it matter? "Dan, I understand your concern, but sometimes you just have to trust your feelings. And sometimes feelings are deceiving. Promise me you'll find out more about her before you do anything drastic." Roger promised, albeit reluctantly. He didn't want to play detective with his girlfriend, but fate decided for him. The next week, when Gloria called in sick, Roger decided to visit her. Linda gave him her address, and he bought flowers and soup in a thermos. Gloria's apartment was above a flower shop on Main Street. Roger climbed the narrow staircase and knocked on the door. Gloria opened it, wrapped in a bathrobe, her eyes red from crying. "Roger, what are you doing here?" "Linda said you were sick. I brought you some soup." Gloria hesitated, but then let him in. The apartment was small and cozy, furnished with modest furniture. Roger went into the kitchen to heat up the soup and accidentally knocked over a stack of papers on the table. The documents scattered across the floor, and when he bent down to pick them up, his gaze fell on a medical certificate. At first, he didn't understand what he was seeing, but then the words formed a terrifying picture. "Sex reassignment hormone therapy, Gloria Morgan, formerly Greg Morgan." Roger froze, unable to believe his eyes. The document trembled in his hands, the words blurring before his eyes. "Roger?" Gloria came out of the bathroom and saw that he was holding her medical records. Her face turned pale. "I can explain." "Explain what?" His voice was hoarse with shock. "Explain that you were—" "Roger, please listen to me." But he was already heading for the door, throwing the documents on the floor. Gloria ran after him. "Roger, wait. I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid." He turned around on the stairs. There was pain, anger, and disgust in his eyes. "Afraid? You lied to me for 2 months. I thought I knew you, but you're—" He couldn't find the words. Gloria stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm the same girl you fell in love with. Nothing has changed." "Everything has changed," he shouted. "It was all a lie." "No, not everything. My feelings for you are real. I really love you." Roger shook his head and ran down the stairs. Gloria didn't follow him. She knew it was useless now. Roger got into his pickup truck and sat there for a long time, gasping for air. The shock gradually gave way to anger. How could she? How could she have deceived him for so long? He felt like a fool, a laughingstock. All their kisses, embraces, declarations of love. It was all based on a lie. The woman he loved he couldn't even bring himself to say it out loud. Roger started the car and drove home, not knowing what to do with this terrible knowledge. His world had been turned upside down, and he couldn't imagine how to go on. Gloria stood in the doorway until she heard the pickup truck drive away. Then she collapsed on the floor and cried as she hadn't cried since she left Columbus. Her worst nightmare had come true. The man she loved had learned the truth and rejected her. Now she would have to run again, find a new place, start over. But this time was worse than the last because she really loved Roger. In Columbus, she had been with a man she didn't know very well. With Roger, it was real. Gloria cried until there were no more tears left. Then she got up, gathered the scattered papers, and began packing her things. She had to leave Noblesville, and the sooner the better. Roger didn't know that Gloria was planning to run away. He sat at home, drinking whiskey and trying to understand what had happened to him. Hadn't he seen the signs? Had he really been so blind? He thought back on their relationship, analyzing every moment. Now a lot of things made sense. Her caution in physical intimacy, her evasive answers about the past, the strange sadness in her eyes. But what tormented him most was the feeling of betrayal. He had trusted her completely, opened his heart to her, and she had played with him. Or had she? Were her feelings real? Roger couldn't answer that question, and it was driving him crazy. He wanted to hate her, but he couldn't erase her tears from his memory, the pain in her voice when she said she loved him. Finally, unable to take it anymore, he picked up the phone and dialed Dan's number. "Dan, can you come over? I need to talk." Dan heard something in his friend's voice and was at his house half an hour later. "What's wrong?" Roger told him everything. Dan listened silently, only shaking his head occasionally. "Jesus, Roger, I don't know what to say. Tell me I'm an idiot. Tell me you warned me. You're not stupid. You just fell in love, and she's not a bad person. She was probably really afraid of losing you. But she lied. Yes, she lied, and that's wrong. But put yourself in her shoes. Imagine what it's like to live with a secret like that." Roger looked at his friend in surprise. "Are you defending her?" "No, I'm just trying to understand." "Roger, what are you going to do?" "I don't know. I can't see her anymore. I can't pretend nothing happened." "What about talking to her? Getting everything out in the open?" Roger shook his head. "No, I'm not ready. Maybe I'll never be ready." Dan nodded understandingly and stayed with his friend all night, helping him cope with the pain. A week passed in agonizing silence. Roger didn't show up at the cafe, and Gloria took sick leave, citing a cold. Linda knew something serious had happened between them, but she didn't press for an explanation. She saw Gloria's red, tear-stained eyes and the suitcases standing by the door of her apartment. Roger worked like a man possessed, trying to drown out his thoughts with physical labor. But every night, when he was alone, he replayed the moment when he saw the documents over and over again in his head. Anger gave way to pain, pain to confusion, and confusion grew into rage again. Dan stopped by every day, trying to support his friend, but he could see that Roger was slowly going mad from the emotions that had overwhelmed him. "You need to talk to her," Dan said on Thursday evening. "This is eating you up inside." "What is there to talk about?" "How she's been mocking me all this time. About the fact that what you had was real. Roger, I saw the way she looked at you. It wasn't a game." Roger shook his head grimly, but his friend's words sank deep into his soul. By Friday, he realized he couldn't live with the uncertainty any longer. He needed answers, explanations, at least an attempt to understand what had happened between them. On Saturday evening, Roger dialed Gloria's number. The phone was picked up after the fifth ring. "Hello?" The voice was hoarse and tired. "It's me. I need to talk to you." A long pause. "Roger, I don't think this is a good idea." "Maybe it's not a good idea, but it's necessary. I'm coming over." "No, don't. People will see." "I don't care about people. 20 minutes. He hung up without waiting for a response. Gloria put down the phone with trembling hands. She had almost finished packing and planned to leave tomorrow morning. The bus to Chicago left at 11. One more night and the nightmare would be over. But now Roger wanted to meet. Part of her hoped he was coming to make up, but the more realistic part of her knew he wanted to settle things, maybe take out all his pent-up anger on her. Roger arrived exactly 20 minutes later. As he climbed the familiar stairs, he could feel his heart pounding. He had rehearsed this meeting hundreds of times, but now he couldn't remember a word of his prepared speech. Gloria opened the door without waiting for him to knock. She looked haggard, and the light in her eyes that he loved so much was gone. Behind her, he saw suitcases. "Are you leaving?" was the first thing that came out of his mouth. "I'm moving. There's nothing left for me here." They stood facing each other in the small hallway, not daring to take the next step. "Can I come in?" Gloria nodded and stepped back. The apartment looked empty, her personal belongings packed into boxes. "When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow morning." Roger sat down on the sofa. Gloria remained standing by the window as if preparing to flee. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why what?" Why didn't you tell me right away? When we met, when we started dating, when I told you I loved you." Gloria wrapped her arms around herself. "Because I was afraid of that. I was afraid you'd leave. Would I have left or not? You left. I left because I found out you'd been lying to me for months, not because of who you are." Gloria turned to him. Hope flashed in her eyes. "Really?" Roger paused, struggling with conflicting emotions. "I don't know. Maybe. But now we'll never know because you chose to lie." "I didn't want to lie. Every day I was going to tell you, but what? What was more important than honesty?" "Fear!" Gloria flashed. "Fear of losing you. Fear of being an outcast again, of running away again. You have no idea what it's like to live with a secret like that. But now I know what it's like to live with someone who lies to you." They looked at each other, and the tension of months of unspoken words hung in the air. "Roger, I'm still the same girl you fell in love with. I haven't changed." "No, you haven't changed. I've changed. I thought I knew you, but it turns out I don't know anything. You know the most important thing. You know that I love you." Roger stood up and began to pace the room. "Love? What is love without trust? What is love built on lies? I didn't lie about my feelings. You lied about everything else, about your past, about who you are, about—" He stopped, unable to say aloud what was tormenting him most. "Tell me," Gloria asked quietly. "Tell me what's really bothering you." Roger turned to her, and in his eyes she saw the pain that was tearing him apart inside. "It bothers me that I kissed you without knowing who you were. It bothers me that I planned a future with you without knowing your past. It bothers me that I—" He faltered, struggling with the words. "That I felt something for you that I should never have felt." "Why? Why shouldn't you have?" "Because you were you." "A man?" Gloria finished for him. "I was a man, and that makes you gay? Is that what scares you?" Roger turned pale. "Don't say that." "Why? Is it true? Are you afraid of what people will think of you if they find out?" "I'm not gay," Roger exploded. "I'm a normal man who dated a normal woman, or so I thought." "What? I'm not a normal woman? You're you." He couldn't find the words to express his confusion. Gloria moved closer to him. "Roger, look at me. I'm a woman. Maybe not like other women, but a woman. The body doesn't determine gender." "It does to me," he whispered. Those words hit Gloria harder than a slap. She recoiled as if he had hit her. "I see. So, to you, I'll always be a man pretending to be a woman." "That's not what I meant." "That's exactly what you meant. To you, all our kisses, hugs, and declarations of love are now a perversion because I wasn't born in the right body." Roger didn't answer, but his silence spoke louder than any words. Gloria sat down on the sofa, suddenly feeling terribly tired. "You know, there was a man in Columbus, Michael. We dated for 3 months before I told him the truth. At first he went crazy, then he seemed to accept it, but a week later he started telling his friends about it. For laughs, the story of how he dated a man in a dress." Roger listened, feeling nauseous. "They started coming to my house, yelling insults, throwing rocks through my windows. Someone wrote pervert on my car in red paint. In the end, I had to leave in the middle of the night, leaving my job and my apartment behind." "Gloria, I thought it would be different with you. I thought you really loved me." "I did. I loved the woman you told me you were." "I am that woman." "No!" Roger shouted. "That woman doesn't exist. She was a figment of your imagination." Gloria stood up, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Fine, if it makes you feel better. So the Gloria you fell in love with was a figment of your imagination. And the real Gloria is standing right here in front of you asking you to leave." Roger looked at her, feeling anger boiling in his chest. He had come looking for answers and found only more pain. She was still trying to manipulate him, to make him feel guilty. "You know what?" he said slowly. "You're right. That woman was a figment of your imagination, and you're nothing but a liar who made me feel like a fool." "Roger, don't say that." "Why? Because it's the truth? You made a fool of me. You think people won't find out? You think your secret will stay a secret in a town like Noblesville?" Gloria paled. "You won't tell. Why shouldn't I? Why should I protect you after everything you've done?" "Because it will destroy me," she whispered. just like you destroyed me. Roger moved toward her, and Gloria instinctively backed away. There was something frightening, primitive in his eyes. Roger, you're scaring me. Good, be scared. Feel some of what I feel. He grabbed her by the shoulders, shaking her. Why? Why did you do this to me? Let me go. Answer me. Why did you make me fall in love with a lie? Gloria tried to break free, but Roger was stronger. His grip tightened, anger clouding his mind. Roger, please, you're hurting me. But he couldn't hear her. All the rage, humiliation, and pain that had built up over the week came crashing down on him at once. He didn't see the woman he loved in front of him, but the source of his suffering, the symbol of his own shame. You made a fool of me, he shouted, shaking her harder and harder. You made me feel like a man, and then you showed me what I am. Gloria tried to push him away, and he pushed her back. She fell onto the coffee table, hitting her head on the corner. The sound was dull and terrifying. Roger froze, his anger instantly replaced by horror. Gloria lay motionless, blood flowing from her head. Gloria, he called in a trembling voice. Gloria! He knelt down beside her, trying to find her pulse. Nothing. Her eyes stared into the void, seeing nothing. No, 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 Roger whispered, trying to bring her back to consciousness. Gloria, wake up! Please, wake up! But it was too late. Gloria Morgan was dead. Roger sat next to the body, unable to believe what had happened. This couldn't be happening. It was a nightmare, and he was about to wake up. But the blood on the floor was real. The motionless body was real. His ruined life was real. Gradually, the shock subsided, and his instinct for self-preservation took over. He couldn't let them find him here. He had to leave, think, plan. Roger wiped his fingerprints off the surfaces he had touched and picked up the documents that had fallen. He looked around the apartment, making sure he hadn't left any traces of his presence. As he descended the stairs, he prayed that no one would see him. The street was empty. It was late on a Saturday evening, and most people were at home. Roger got into his car and drove home, trying to drive calmly and not attract attention. At home, he took a shower, burned his clothes in the fireplace, and drank a large amount of whiskey. Then he picked up the phone and called Dan. Listen, can you confirm that I was at your place all evening? If anyone asks. Roger, what happened? Just say we were sitting around, drinking beer, watching the game on TV, okay? Dan was silent for a moment. Okay, but you'll tell me everything later. Later. Roger hung up and lay down on the couch, staring at the ceiling. He had killed a man, a woman he loved, or a man he thought was a woman. He didn't understand anything anymore. The only thing he knew for sure was that his life was over. Even if he wasn't caught, he would live with this burden for the rest of his days. Gloria Morgan's body was discovered by a neighbor on Sunday morning. The elderly woman had noticed a strange smell and decided to check on the young woman upstairs. Detective Irma Mitchell arrived at the scene half an hour after the police were called. It was her first murder in 5 years of working in Noblesville. Usually it was just thefts, fights, and domestic disputes. Irma carefully examined the crime scene. The packed suitcases suggested that the victim was planning to leave. There were no signs of forced entry. Valuables were untouched. This was not a robbery. Someone knew her, she said to her assistant. She let him in. Questioning the neighbors yielded no results. No one had seen or heard anything. But Irma knew that in a small town, there were no secrets. Sooner or later, the truth would come out. Monday began for Noblesville with news that spread through the town faster than wildfire. Gloria Morgan, a young waitress at the Main Street Cafe, had been found dead in her apartment. It was suspected murder. Roger heard about it on the morning news while shaving. His hand trembled and he cut himself with the razor, the blood mixed with the shaving cream, running down the sink in pink streams. He stared at it, mesmerized, remembering the other blood on the floor of the small apartment. At the auto repair shop, he tried to work as usual, but his hands were shaking, bolts slipped out of his fingers, and nuts fell to the floor. The first customer noticed his condition. "Roger, you look pale as a sheet. Maybe you should go home?" "No, I'm fine. I just didn't get enough sleep." By lunchtime, the whole town was buzzing with gossip. At the barber shop, people were discussing how that girl must have gotten involved with the wrong crowd. At the bank, There were whispers about drugs. At the post office, people were theorizing about a robbery. Dan stopped by Roger's place after work. He looked troubled. "It's a terrible story about that girl. The police were at my place." Roger's heart sank. "Why?" "They asked if I had seen anything suspicious yesterday. I told them we had been at my place all evening, drinking beer and watching the game." "Thanks." Dan looked intently at his friend. "Roger, they asked about you specifically. The detective knows you two are seeing each other." "Of course he does. Everyone in town knows." "But why did you ask me to lie? What really happened?" Roger turned away, pretending to concentrate on repairing the engine. "Nothing special. I just don't want the police poking their noses into my personal life." Dan didn't look convinced, but he didn't press the issue. Detective Irma Mitchell, meanwhile, was methodically gathering information about the victim. Gloria Morgan, 22, had been working at the cafe for 2 months. She had moved from Columbus, rented an apartment, and lived quietly. No enemies, no debts, no drug problems. But there was one interesting detail. Several witnesses had seen Roger Coleman, a local mechanic, regularly visiting the cafe and paying special attention to the victim. Irma spoke with Linda Parks, the cafe owner. The elderly woman was upset and frightened. Gloria was a good girl, quiet, hardworking. She had a sadness in her eyes, but she never hurt anyone. "Tell me about her relationship with Roger Coleman." Linda paused. "They were dating. Roger is a good man, but he recently got divorced and was depressed. He liked Gloria." "How was their relationship going?" "At first it was good. Roger started smiling more and taking care of himself. But last week something happened. Gloria took sick leave, and Roger stopped coming around. She was planning to leave." "Do you know why?" "No, but I saw her crying. And Roger looked upset when he walked past the cafe." Irma wrote everything down in her notebook. It was a classic scenario, a relationship, a fight, possibly a crime of passion. She decided to talk to Roger in person. Roger saw the police car at his auto repair shop and felt his stomach knot up. Detective Mitchell was a woman in her 40s with short hair and alert eyes. She looked competent and determined. "Mr. Coleman, Detective Mitchell, can we talk?" "Sure, what about?" "Gloria Morgan, I understand you knew her." Roger nodded, trying to look calm. "Yes, we were seeing each other." "When was the last time you saw her?" "I'm not sure. Last week at a cafe, I think." "Did you have a fight?" "You could say that. It wasn't working out." Irma watched him closely. He seemed nervous, but that was natural. Finding out that a girl you were dating had been murdered would be a shock to anyone. "Where were you on Saturday night?" "At a friend's house, Dan Hill's. We were drinking beer and watching the game." "Can he confirm that?" "I think so." Irma wrote down the information. "Mr. Coleman, what exactly did you argue about?" Roger paused. "Personal differences. We weren't right for each other." "Gloria was planning to leave town. Was that related to your differences?" "I don't know, maybe." The detective closed her notebook. "If you remember anything else, give me a call. Here's my card." After she left, Roger lit a cigarette with trembling hands. So far, so good. But he knew this was only the beginning. Irma checked Roger's alibi. Dan Hill confirmed that they had spent Saturday evening together from 7 until midnight. But something about his behavior alarmed the detective. He answered too quickly, as if he had rehearsed his answers. She decided to dig deeper into the victim's past. A call to the Columbus police yielded some interesting information. Gloria Morgan, yes, she filed a stalking report. A Michael Stanton threatened her after he found out about, a delicate situation. She had some medical issues. What kind of issues? She was transgender, born a man but lived as a woman. Irma put down the phone, digesting the information she had received. It explained a lot. In a conservative town like Noblesville, news like that could be a motive for murder. Now she had to find out if Roger Coleman knew about it. The next day, Irma returned to Roger with more questions. He was working under the hood of an old Ford, and she saw his shoulders tense when he heard her voice. "Mr. Coleman, I've learned something about Miss Morgan's past. She was transgender. Did you know that?" Roger straightened up too quickly and hit his head on the hood. "What?" "Gloria Morgan was born a man. She had been living as a woman for the last few years. Is that true? Roger looked at her as if she were speaking a foreign language. That's impossible. It's quite possible. And it explains why she left Columbus. There was an incident with a man who didn't take the news well. I didn't know anything about that, Roger muttered. Irma watched his reaction. The shock seemed genuine, but she had seen enough good actors among criminals. Mr. Coleman, if you found out about this and were upset, that's understandable. Many men react painfully to news like this. I said I didn't know anything. Okay, but if you did and it caused a fight. Detective Mitchell, I was at Dan's on Saturday night, all evening. Check it out. Irma nodded and left, but Roger knew she didn't believe him. By Thursday, everyone in town knew about Gloria's past. One of the police officers had let it slip, and the news spread like wildfire. The reaction was predictable, ranging from sympathy to disgust. Poor girl, she must have suffered her whole life, some said. The pervert got what he deserved, whispered others. How must Roger feel? The poor guy must be going crazy, gossiped a third group. Roger heard these conversations and felt the noose tightening around his neck. Everyone knew about his relationship with Gloria. Everyone understood what a shock he must have experienced. The motive for murder was obvious. Friday brought a new challenge. Irma arrived with a search warrant. Mr. Coleman, I need to search your house and your car. On what grounds? I have reason to believe that on Saturday evening you were not at Mr. Hill's house, but at the victim's apartment. Roger felt the ground slip away beneath his feet. That's not true. Then the search will be fruitless, and you are free to go. The search lasted 3 hours. They found ashes in the fireplace, which was unusual for such warm weather. They found traces of blood in the bathroom sink, which Roger had not washed away properly. They found a gas receipt with a time that did not match his alibi. Mr. Coleman, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Gloria Morgan. As she read him his rights, Irma saw not a monster but a broken man who couldn't cope with the truth about the woman he loved. At the station, Roger finally confessed. Not in detail, not everything, but enough. I didn't want to kill her. I just couldn't accept it. She had been cheating on me for months. She made me feel like a fool. Tell me what happened. We had an argument. I got angry and pushed her. She fell awkwardly. It was an accident. Irma wrote down his statement, knowing that the truth was probably more brutal, but it was enough to press charges. Roger Coleman's trial was a big deal in Noblesville. The town was split into 2 camps. Some thought he was the victim of deception. Others thought he was a murderer who couldn't accept his victim's humanity. Dan testified against his friend, admitting he lied about his alibi. I thought he just didn't want to be bothered. I had no idea. Linda Parks cried on the witness stand as she talked about Gloria's kindness and her hopes for a new life. Roger was sentenced to 15 years in prison for manslaughter. The prosecutor wanted a longer sentence, but the defense was able to prove that it was a crime of passion, not cold-blooded murder. In prison, Roger thought about Gloria's last words. I'm the same girl you fell in love with. Now, months later, he was beginning to understand that she was right. The person he had fallen in love with was real. Her feelings, her kindness, her hopes were real. But it was too late to understand and too late to forgive. Gloria Morgan was buried in the town cemetery. More people than expected attended the funeral, some out of curiosity, others out of sincere sympathy. Linda placed a simple inscription on the grave. Gloria Morgan, she deserved love. Dan Hill left Noblesville a year after the trial. He couldn't live in a town where every day reminded him of his friend's betrayal and his own complicity. Detective Irma Mitchell was promoted and transferred to a larger city. The Morgan case taught her how fear and prejudice can turn an ordinary person into a murderer. The Main Street Cafe closed 6 months later. Linda couldn't work where every corner reminded her of Gloria. She sold the business and moved to Indianapolis to live with her daughter. Noblesville gradually forgot about the story, as small towns do. New gossip, new dramas, and new tragedies emerged. But some residents remembered the young woman who just wanted to start a new life, and the man who couldn't accept her for who she was. The story of Gloria and Roger became a reminder of the price of prejudice, and that love not based on acceptance can turn into hatred. In a small town where everyone knows everyone, Secrets don't stay secret, and human weaknesses have a way of turning into tragedies.